the bag needs to come in. Doesn't have got the feet in there now, but they are.
So what was the difference between EBs and stickies now then?
Well, there's no, they're just ordinary rubber. They're not, not sticky rubber. I think sticky rubber came in about, was it 82? 83, 84, around about then. And this is what we had. I used to get through 2 pairs of these a year. I was a pharmacist for 40 years. I did a year at the hospital in Lancaster. Then I came up to Carlisle, and I remember the climbers down there in Lancaster say, when you go up to Carlisle, there's this lad there, Jeff Lamb, he'll show you what's what. Was Alistair Yarrow, Stu Wilson, Ronnie Kenyon, one or two of the other lads from Penrith area. And we heard on the grapevine they'd found a really good local crag. And I can remember going out one day with some local climbers from Carlisle, looking at all sorts of bits of rubbish. No, this can't be it, no. And eventually they showed it off to the world. Every Thursday evening we used to meet in the Calais in Botchergate. The bar would be full of all these climbers. About 30 of them could all lead extreme. There were hod carriers and scaffolders and solicitors. Climbing is a great leveller. You can be top solicitor, but when you get on the crag, it's the climbing that counts, and the rock will sort you out. Armathwaite is really good because you can climb there in the winter, whereas the lakes usually very little available. It's so close to Carlisle, you can get there after work, run to the crag, out on the overhanging wall and back home. It's really, really good climbing.
There were 1,000,001 problems here.
Yeah.
You can imagine in every few feet there was another problem, using that hole to get to the ledge.
Quite a lot, yeah,
to
you can
get
imagine
to
there's
that
a lot
ledge.
of limits.
Yeah,
Yeah.
any number of them that were worked out.
It's perfect kind of spot for that sort of thing, isn't it? Nice soft landing.
Well, landings are brilliant.
Yeah.
They're just perfect. Funnily enough, actually, I think Jeff was one of the first people to invent mats, because we used to remember that when we climbed in Northumberland, we used to go every weekend during the winter to Northumberland, and he had his old Ford, no, it wasn't, was it a Morris Minor van, a blue van, and in the back of it he had this big thick, like foam mattresses, and he used to take it to the crag, and it was really for sleeping in, for kipping in the back, but he'd roll it up and tie it up, and he used to take it to the crags, and that was the first time I ever saw anybody use padding to jump onto.
What year was that?
Well, it'll be 70s, mid-70s. I arrived here in 1973, and this place had already been climbed, I think, the previous year, but it was just taking off in terms of doing new routes and people using it for training. You would always find at least a dozen people down here every time you came, and the climbing scene in Carlisle was just unbelievable. There must have been more climbers per head of population than most places, probably even Sheffield at the time. It was phenomenal. You could always find someone to climb with. It was one of those little periods, I think, that happens quite frequently in climbing history, where a group of activists are goading each other on, pushing each other in standard, and suddenly, you know, it takes off. And I've seen in climbing history that happen quite a lot. And I certainly think that was happening here in the 70s in Carlisle. Really brilliant. I thought I was fairly good when I arrived here, but quickly realised there were an awful lot of people who were climbing at least as well as I was. So you can probably see from your camera that it's fiercely overhanging, very strenuous, and not very well protected. Quite a route for its time, but in the end fairly typical of the sort of really steep and strenuous things that Jeff Lamb was capable of. Jeff was hugely talented and very, very strong, particularly good on the overhanging stuff. He just walked over overhangs. He seemed to have very good kind of spatial awareness. I don't know how else to describe it. He just seems to see immediately how to do them. I was previously living in Yorkshire, and I knew Alan Gregg, and he taught me in some ways into coming and living up here in Carlisle, and I couldn't believe it. The number of climbers and the standard they were all climbing at. It was a phenomenal scene. It really drove standards on, I think, and was the impetus for here and the Lake District at the time. And Jeff was at the forefront of that locally. He was definitely the local hero here, and he'd been at the vanguard of climbing for a number of years. Reducing aid on climbs was the big thing in the mid-70s. In fact, when I arrived here, that seemed to be the total preoccupation with Jeff. It was all about seeking out the climbs that had been done during the 60s, nearly all with quite a bit of aid, and eliminating them. That was the really big fashion, a lot more than new routing actually. And it wasn't really until the late 70s that people like Jeff and Pete Botterill and Dave Armstrong, myself particularly, I suppose, started doing new climbs, you know, in the Lake District as well. Pete Botterill was a master technician. If you ever watched him climb, I always thought he was technically better than any of us, you know. I just happened to have a bit of a longer neck than the other guys, you know, and I was the bold one, I suppose, and I would take more chances. But you know, Jeff was a phenomenal climber.
Awesome. Really good. Juggy, steep, sunny, belayed by a total legend. Can't really ask for more than that.
Generally, people tended to solo here, and certainly when we came down, nobody could really be bothered getting ropes out. You could either solo it or you couldn't. There are a couple of routes that I did, a couple of fairly bold slab routes, but they were very poorly protected or not protected, as is the nature of sandstone here, and particularly the more slabby routes. They're not very well protected at all. I've seen it written a few times in magazines that the E-grading system was invented and developed by various people. I actually think they've got it wrong, because I was fairly well in touch with the climbing scene at the time, and the first time I ever heard of it at all was through Pete Botterill.
Oh, there we go. This is great. You're asking about grading.
Pete sat down and thought of all the extremes that he knew of in the Lake District, and then tried to subdivide them so that it made some sort of sense. Obviously the easiest ones being E1 and the harder ones being E3, E4, E5. And he came up with a list of climbs in the Lake District, and it became a real talking point in the pub.
This will be like the first. This is a list of all routes that were given extremely severe, and then, you know, myself and other people have put what number extreme they think it is, which became the precursor of the E grades.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that probably climbing history has got wrong. Pete Botterill should definitely be credited.
Everything that goes into making a route extreme, and E stands for everything from exposure, how strenuous it is, lack of protection, and so on. It's an overall grade.
We climbed here at weekends and evenings, obviously during the summer, but we needed to continue that training in the winter. And I don't know who initially started it, but it became very popular to come down here with torchlights. The trouble is, it got very congested as well, so everybody had to go in the same direction to the end and then wait and then all come back following each other. Yeah, it must have looked bizarre to anybody who was passing or even on the other side of the river to look across here and just see these numerous lights flashing around the bay. We were a pretty dedicated bunch in those days.
I came down, sort of 99, 2000. We just came down to the beach really, just sort of bouldering about in the evenings. And it wasn't until, I don't know, maybe another, maybe sort of late 2009, 10, when I sort of really got down in and started doing all the routes and sort of putting the effort in to clean some of them. But it just doesn't seem to be anyone coming down here and sort of putting the effort into cleaning up routes. But since the old boys used to come down, they did a lot of work in the first place to clean all these routes, and they've just sort of got overgrown again. I had the old Stu Wilson guide, and there's a lot of routes in there which had NL by them, so they were just previous sort of top rope problems. And you have down them and you sort of have a good look, and there's some alright gear, probably not full offable gear, but and sort of slowly started ticking my way through. And then the last sort of 4 or 5 years, I've been ticking through all those not leads now, and there's only a couple left now, so if anyone's interested, you better get down here quick. Yeah, so that slab, I think we first looked at it not shortly after we'd been down actually, and never really sort of thought much about it, just thinking that'd be really good to do one day and not really thinking I'd ever be able to do it. And then yeah, was it last year, managed to get it done. It's about 13, 14 metres by the time you get to the top, so a bit scary when you get up there, but really good climbing.
Go on, Pete.
Come on, Pete.
Go on, Pete.
Good effort. Nice one, Pete.
Someone else can get on it now. It's about time.
To be here by the River Eden is a lovely place to come and climb. I think it was quite therapeutic. I very often came down here. I'd come down on my own and solo routes. It's peaceful, it's tranquil, it's very beautiful. It goes without saying, it is a really beautiful place. Everybody who knew him loved him. He always had a smile, he was always friendly, he never said a bad word about anyone. His climbing was brilliant, as you know, but he was very, very modest guy. Those people who knew him absolutely loved him, you know.
That's burning bridges on Scarfell.
I've got nothing but, you know, fond memories for Jeff. He was a really great guy.
I suppose he taught me how to put gear in, and he taught me how to belay properly. You know, he really encouraged me to, you know, try things. That's Jeff on sacrificial crack. But he was inspirational, I think. Never let you down.
Oh, honey, you're so strong, like chili powder in your arms. When you hold me in them, I never have a chance to get away. I'm with you when I'm gone. I walk the streets on my own all night long, all night long, all night long.